Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the breakdown, X's and O's. And we're not talking hugs and kisses, ladies and gentlemen, because today I am in a different setting, something that you're not used to seeing me in, maybe a little bit better than the college dorm room, but I'm in Mobile, Alabama, and I'm live from the Senior Bowl. I had to take a week off of school to kind of get my duties here, but I'm without the 5-year NFL veteran. The man, the myth, the legend, I like to call Nate Nessie, is out. He had a very, very big conference call today at 7, and he might be able to share that with you guys next week. But in the meantime, I always come prepared. You know me. So for tonight, I would like to introduce live my co-host, Mr. Jackson Gross. Come on, join me, Jackson.
Yes, sir. What's going on, Connor?
Making it. I'm so mentally tired, physically tired,
I feel you.
emotionally tired. We've had a long. Today was the biggest day of the season.
Yeah.
We had a
Easy.
super long day, and I'm not excited what I have to do right after this live stream.
Well, no, you should be excited because you know what we're doing, right?
We're going to Arby's. We're going to Arby's. We are going to Arby's. It'll be a nice little break from technology, everything to do with everything. But I'd like to ask you, Jackson.
Yes.
What's up?
We're good. I'm pretty beat too. Both of us were up very late. I was working on a couple of articles. You were trying to get all those interviews up last night. But no, things are good. Had an awesome experience today. Interviewed a whole bunch of guys, both at practice and during the media day session today, which I think for the most part went great. So I'm excited to talk a lot about these guys. Some of these guys gave some very interesting answers. I'm excited to talk about lots of really good people that we got to talk to today.
There were a lot of guys that I wanted to talk to, but I saved a dude for the media. Woody Marks, if you're watching, you're probably not, but thank you for that interview. I enjoyed it. That's all I wanted from this week was to interview you, and it happened. It came to fruition. You were my Buki and Jaden Crumity for this year. My Buki, not Pookie. Buki with the B. Get that right from last year. If you haven't checked that out, go watch his interviews. He's on Cleveland Browns now. Shout out to Buki. But, Jackson, if you don't mind, I'm ready to talk some football.
I'm ready.
So let's get into the first segment. It's not Nate's Necessary Notes, but it is the devastating news. Now, I always come prepared. I make notes, so I can't do anything without my trusty dusty notebook I hid under the couch while we were
Hey,
doing
I saw you had one. I had to grab my own.
So I always write notes for sure, and what Nate and I do as the NFL season comes to an end, but throughout the NFL season, we like to recap what kind of we saw, what we kind of observed in the past week. And so this past week was none other than conference championships. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go over the two conference championships, starting with the NFC. I want to do the NFC first because I kind of have a little bit of spiel for the Chiefs and Bills game.
Okay.
So we'll talk about that. But I'm going to lead it in. So we have the Eagles and Commanders.
Yes.
Third time they met this year. They were 1-1 in the regular season, and this was to really decide all the marbles. It's like when you play rock, paper, scissors, and it's 1-1. It's like best 2 out of 3, right? Whoever wins this gets it. So the Eagles end up pretty.
Mollywopping.
Yeah, I mean it was bad. They won the NFC title game 55-23, and multiple records were set on this day. So we have most points in a playoff game since 2000.
Okay.
We have the most points scored in a conference game ever in this game. And we have the most points scored in the 2024 season, which is, I didn't know that until nobody had scored 50 points this year until the Eagles. And to point out a player for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts. I mean, he's only been in the league not too long. He's already set the postseason record for the most rushing TDs scored by a QB in NFL history. So, Jackson, NFC title game. What did you like about it? What you didn't like about it? Kind of tell me your thoughts on it if you watched it. I watched it. It was a pretty depressing game to watch. But
yeah,
what did you think about it?
No, I think you hit the head on the nail with all of those records. I'd add one more. It's the most points scored by one team in a conference championship game since the Panthers did against the Cardinals back in 2014, 2015, when they made the Super Bowl. So I think the biggest thing we saw, and I think that might change things moving forward, is we saw how impactful one signing can be. And if you have been living under a rock, you would know that it was Saquon Barkley. Like last year, they had DeAndre Swift, solid guy, good runner in a good offensive system and a good offensive line, had over 1,000 yards with the Eagles. But just by himself, Saquon Barkley, I don't know if this is including playoffs, had 2,700 scrimmage yards this year. So safe to say he was a desperately needed piece for that Eagles offense. Allows A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith to work a lot better. Dallas Goedert as well. Get that offensive line moving. And we've always talked about, while he was on the Giants, man, imagine Saquon Barkley behind the Lions offensive line or the Eagles offensive line. And now you know why we say those things, because this is what happens. I mean, if he didn't sit for that 17th game, he's the all-time single-season leading rusher ahead of Eric Dickerson. So that, I think, is the biggest thing you can take away from this game. That, and I think it's also as disappointing for Commanders fans as it is to lose not only to your division rival, lose an NFC championship game, but lose by as many points as you did. No one, probably especially me, expect the Commanders to even make the playoffs altogether. I thought this was going to be a Philly and Dallas division like it has been the last couple of years. So, congratulations to the Commanders. Got a great quarterback, good head coach, good offensive coordinator who's staying, which is going to be great for him.
We'll talk about that later.
But I think without a doubt, considering all the fun people made of the Commanders signing Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner in the offseason, like all these old wash dudes, but Bobby Wagner is still one of the best linebackers in the league, and Zach Ertz was a solid target for Jaden Daniels. So overall, congratulations to Commanders fans. I think their future is bright. They got a ton of cap space, some good draft picks. It's just up to the GM to make it good on it and see if they can maybe knock off the Eagles if they ever reach each other in the playoffs again.
Now, both these rosters did really, really well on kind of rounding out before the season started. And You talk about the Commanders, they had one of the biggest free agencies in the
Yep.
NFL. It might have been the biggest. I mean, the people they signed completely flipped that old team, and it looked like a different team. I mean, they exceeded every expectation. But you talk about the Commanders roster. I'm gonna say the Eagles have the best roster in football this year. They have the best roster. You talk about Saquon, they did great. Other than just like the Saquon acquisition, they did so good. They hired Vic Fangio
Yep.
from ex Broncos head coach
Yep.
for their D coordinator job.
Former Bears and 49ers defensive coordinator.
Exactly, and he did fantastic. I mean, he did the best you could want from a defensive coordinator, and
Yep.
if he gets another shot at head coach, that's just whatever the future leads to him. But they did great drafting too. You get Quinion Mitchell, you need your corner. You have Darius Slay getting older. You need somebody to kind of be his protege. You get Quinion Mitchell, and then you get Cooper DeJean
In the second.
And oh my gosh, so it just works so well together. Their secondary was
Mhm.
already good, but it got that much better. And to say like, hey, we're gonna have these guys for 4 more years now.
Yep.
For a rookie contract. I mean, they did phenomenal, and I can't see the Eagles not being contenders after this year.
Oh, absolutely. As long as they can keep Jalen Hurts healthy, they're a perennial NFC contender.
Well, we talk about the NFC title game.
Oh boy.
Let's go to the AFC title game, and let's see what I have for this AFC title game. The Bills lose to the Chiefs,
Okay.
32-29. Now, before I get into my spiel about it, because we might get off on a tangent,
I'm sure we will.
what did you think about this game overall? I know there were some questionable things. We kind of had this same narrative of, oh, these refs are helping the Kansas City Chiefs in the divisional round, and now we're kind of seeing it went tenfold in the conference championship. What's going on there, Jackson?
Yeah, I think as much as we like to complain about referees potentially helping out the Chiefs, and I think they're, I don't know if not unintentional is the right word, but I think the biggest thing is that when it come down to it, the plays where the referees make mistakes should not be the plays that decide the game or the things that people focus on for the most part, unless it's like something completely egregious like in that Saints Rams NFC title game. Like if it's something like that, that's like completely agreed. But like, at the end of the day, you have to play the game well enough to where those plays don't matter. And time again, the Bills' defense just does not rise up to the task playing against the Kansas City Chiefs. I believe in that divisional game against the Texans, they scored, 24, 23? Yeah, like, the Texans defense did a pretty good job of limiting that offense. What do they do when they play the Bills? They put up 32 points, and in every game in the playoffs that the Bills and Chiefs have played against each other with Allen and Mahomes, the Bills' defense is giving up 34 points a game. I don't care who you have a quarterback. You could have Peyton Manning with Lamar Jackson's speed back there, like throwing the ball. Like, if your defense is giving up 34 points a game on average, it's going to take a superhero effort to win. And honestly, that one game where the Chiefs had 13 seconds left against the Bills a few years ago,
solely defense.
Like, you got that superhero effort from Josh Allen to find Gabe Davis in the end zone that year, and you still lose in overtime because your defense didn't stop him at the end and didn't stop him in overtime. They basically changed the overtime rules because of that game. So now you're at a point where they did come back. They had several leads in the second half, and they blew each one. I just like, they looked like the Bears, when they got the number one pick, can't tackle, can't do anything. Like, I swear, Patrick Mahomes, they slather him in butter whenever he goes out to scramble because he had that one rushing touchdown. It's like, he's not that fast. He's not the strongest quarterback in the world. Just tackle him. Like, it's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling. But like I said, at the end of the day, you have to play well enough to where those human error calls by the referees don't decide the game. Should those calls have been overturned? Probably most of them, especially we'll get into the big one. But yeah, I think it just comes down to that. You have to play well enough to where those points don't matter.
Now I'm about to mention the big one, but before I do, Josh Allen has never beaten Mahomes in the playoffs. He is now
He's beaten him
winless.
twice in the regular season.
He beat him more than twice. In the
At least the last couple of years. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's now winless against Mahomes, and somehow it just never seems to fail. The Kansas City Chiefs get above Josh Allen in the postseason. But look, we had a field goal game.
Yep.
Could kick the field goal and tied it up. And I'm no Bills fan, but I'm going to make an excuse. That tush push where Josh Allen was entirely over. I mean, it was blatant. Ray Charles could have seen it. Stevie Wonder could have seen it. I mean, it was blatantly in front of the line, and they said, no, we're going to fourth down.
Well, that was fourth down.
Yeah, that was fourth down. It was turnover. But the tush push, he did not get a single tush push until that play. I believe he was 0-3 until that play. And then he became 0-4 after that play. And it was like, dude, I mean, blind people can see that was a first down. His whole body was past the first down marker.
Mm-hmm.
I would call that pretty egregious, Jackson.
Yeah.
I would call it pretty egregious. You have field goal game. New overtime rules. Not saying it would have changed the game. It could have. But you make a call like that, and you lose the lead. It spices things up.
Yeah, but at the same time, the Bills still had another shot even after that, and their offensive line allowed the Chiefs to get a lot of pressure that forced Josh Allen to miss Khalil Shakir, who was wide open on the orbit route, and then he still gets off a throw somehow, and it just goes through Dalton Kincaid's hands.
I wouldn't blame that on Kincaid though.
They should have caught it, but it was still a tough catch to begin with.
And it was a tough throw for Josh Allen to make. I mean, he had 4 guys on him at that point.
Yeah.
He ran off like Superman and tried to throw it. It was a great ball for the circumstances, I think. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I just really want to see someone besides Kansas, and this is the narrative. We want to see someone besides Kansas City in the Super Bowl, but this was the same narrative with the Patriots. We look at it, you honestly have to have respect. The amount of work and effort it takes especially in the offseason, to make such a well-rounded team, and you still win year after year after year, able to keep in your money under the cap. I mean, it's insane. I mean, you got to have that respect, as maybe not as a fan, but like as a third party watcher.
Yeah.
You know, we could be fans of the game and say, oh, well, we don't want Kansas City to be in here. We'd rather have a Lions and Bills Super Bowl or whatever. But this might be the best marketable Super Bowl that the NFL could have had. Because, look, now it is a Super Bowl 57 rematch.
Mm-hmm.
That already checks one box. Hey, we can say that. It's in New Orleans. Which, well, after the kind of the big stuff with New Orleans that's been going on, you know, people probably feel a little bit more emotional to go to the game or whatever. But first three-peat ever for the Kansas City Chiefs, if they can pull this Super Bowl win off. And then we talked about how great that Eagles roster is. So you really have three-peat, rematch, Eagles revenge. Either way, it's marketable.
Yeah.
If you look at it as a business standpoint, this is marketable. And I've been saying for a minute, the NFL scripted.
Oh,
and if I were a business, this is genius. This is genius. I'm sitting here having a rematch. I have these conditions. It's either the first three-peat ever or I get a revenge tour from the Eagles. It's genius. Either way, I win.
You get Saquon's first ring on his birthday.
On his and Cooper DeJean's birthday. It is a win-win. Any outcome, it's a win, and that's what the NFL makes sure. This is a business, Jackson. This is a business, and the NFL is the best dang business in this country. They take the hearts of fans and manipulate it so well that now we have such great conditions for business in this Super Bowl 59.
Yeah, although I will say, I think you would have had a lot of fans excited for a Bills Lions Super Bowl because at least you're still getting two fairly big markets in Buffalo and Detroit. You're getting two teams that have never won a Super Bowl, especially the Bills end for losing those four in a row back in the 90s. So you have that. So I think that would have still been very marketable. Plus, you would have had the number one seed Lions in there against the top two seed in the AFC with the Bills. So I think there were avenues for that. But yeah, I mean, and I just got done with an interview where we talked about organizational synergy. Like the Kansas City Chiefs are that prime example. It's you got the quarterback, you got arguably the second greatest coach of all time now, and Andy Reid. To be that new number one corner, and he's taken off with that. So I agree. You have to give credit as just a unbiased like onlooker of like, okay, we hate that this is the result. We hate that this is happening, but the fact that to be able to do is drafting guys like Isaiah Pacheco in the seventh round. And I think Kelsey was a day three pick at one point, or at least a third round pick at the very least. So the Chiefs, again, organizational synergy, and they just done a great job of carrying that over and building this to where, shoot, if things go well next year, we could be looking at a four-peat.
As long as Patrick Mahomes is under center, they're gonna find a way to win.
You are guaranteed 12 to 13 wins with Patrick Mahomes under center.
Well, I'll tell you one thing you're guaranteed.
What's that,
Jackson? If I'm in a car, like we've been the entire time in Mobile, in this city, driving 30 minutes for a 15-minute trip, I can guarantee you that Jeff Wertepney will hook you up with the best car insurance in town.
Here's to the grown-ups. Your car is now your office, stage, nursery. Shh, sorry. Erie Insurance offers products that lots of other companies don't. That's a big deal, and it's a good deal, too. And with Erie, you get your own independent agent, not a giant corporate call center or some online robot. You meet with a real person, like this.
Your local Erie agent is Building Block Insurance Group. Get a quote today at 704-464-4544.
Erie Insurance.
And when you call Jeff Wertepney at 704-464-4544, go ahead and ask him if he knows how to charge a dang laptop, because our producer is having a little bit of trouble.
That's not my fault. That's not my fault. I was told it would have been plugged in already. This is not my laptop. Don't blame the producer.
The power bank part wasn't completely plugged in, so that's why I wasn't charging.
As we figure out how to charge Jackson's laptop.
Today. Don't blame me. It's not my fault.
Thank you, son. Message from Si. But we got a great commercial. And frankly, I'm ready to get to the end of this show because I got a lot to talk about in New Orleans. So, before we get there, though, I want to introduce the second segment of the show. Unlocking Answers. Ooh. Because today, we're going to unlock a couple answers from you. So, I have now a quote from the greatest head coach of all time. And we talk a lot about Super Bowls. Well, the greatest head coach of all time seems to think that the Super Bowl trophy should be renamed. Now, Super Bowl trophy is the Lombardi Trophy, and it was named after Vince Lombardi, who's the Packers legend, head coach who won the first two Super Bowls. So he's credited with that, and so he said, hey, it happened with him. We're going to call the trophy the Lombardi Trophy. Whoever wins the Super Bowl, that's what's going to be hoisted in the air. Well, here comes Bill Belichick, the greatest head coach of all time. He said, and I quote, maybe they should name it the Brady Trophy. He won 7 of them. Of course, 7 is the record. for a player and for a franchise. And Tom Brady has 7 of them just by himself. The Lombardi Trophy, I mean, you can't really change the name of something that's just all concrete and set in stone. But hypothetically, if we could, with how much Tom Brady has done for the game, should we rename the Super Bowl trophy the Brady Trophy?
Well, I'm going to give the silly answer first.
Okay.
And just throwing it out there. Then I'll give my more serious answer.
And then tell me why it would be a problem if we changed it.
Okay. So if my silly answer is, as a completely biased Bears fan, I'd be okay with that because removing any Packers legacy from the NFL is fine with me. And that way the only big trophies would be the Lamar Hunt for the AFC, which belongs to the Chiefs, and the George Halas Trophy, which is after George Halas, who was the Bears. Like you can say pretty much
Bears.
Yes. On the serious side of things, maybe you can name like the Super Bowl MVP trophy, the Tom Brady Super Bowl MVP. I don't think there's a reason to change the Lombardi Trophy to name it after Tom Brady because he won 7 Super Bowls. Because, like, what are we going to call it? The San Francisco 49ers Super Bowl trophy or the Pittsburgh Steelers trophy because they won? Are we going to call it the New England Patriots Super Bowl trophy because they won a ton? Like, no. Like, there's no reason to change it. Again, like they did with the All-Star game in the NBA. They have the All-Star Game MVP after Kobe Bryant, and the Finals MVP award is named after Bill Russell. So if you wanted to do something like that where you name the Super Bowl MVP trophy after Tom Brady, I'm not going to question that. I think that's a great compromise if there's an actual push for that. If there's an actual like groundswell outside of the New England and Tampa Bay areas for the trophy name to be changed. But I think that's probably, if there is steam for that, is probably the most likely result. The MVP trophy gets named the Tom Brady Super Bowl MVP trophy, which, again, I'd be okay with. But again, no reason to change the Lombardi trophy. It's a legendary trophy. It's like, you're not going to change the Stanley Cup for hockey, and you're not going to change the Commissioner's Cup name for the World Series trophy. It's like, you're not going to change Larry O'Brien for the NBA. There's like, those names are synonymous with the history of the game, and changing it because of more recent things is silly, because you're going to want people to know 50 years from now who Vince Lombardi was, who Larry O'Brien was, why is it called the Stanley Cup, and all this kind of stuff, because that's what makes things special. Changing it for the sake of adapting to modern times isn't always the best thing to do.
I agree. Honestly, that was the perfect answer. That's honestly, if you want to have a compromise and name the Super Bowl MVP trophy Tom Brady, which could very well happen. I mean, that might be something that is in the minds of several people. I think that'd be a great idea because he's done a lot for the game, but so has everybody that these awards are named after.
Exactly.
You know, Lombardi won the first 2 Super Bowls. That's in history, man. We can't erase that, and I love that. The way you put it, I mean, it's true. If we erase that, our kids are going to grow up not knowing who Vince Lombardi was. Like, honestly, it was before our time, but, you know, we know it. But that's because it's called the Lombardi Trophy. You seek that curiosity that goes in your mind. Who's Lombardi? And then you go, oh, it's Vince Lombardi. This is the guy that won the first 2 Super Bowls with the Packers. I mean, this is something that has to stay in history. I agree. I would honestly like if the MVP award was renamed Tom Brady, just because of how much he's done for the game. 7 Super Bowls is not anything a franchise can say, nor any other player ever.
Nope.
I don't think there is a player in any sport that has won 7.
I think the closest is Robert Horry from the NBA. And then obviously you got Michael Jordan with 6.
Yeah.
I mean, well, Bill Russell won 11.
Oh, that's right. Bill Russell won a butt ton of rings. But, you know, I don't want to get into basketball, football talk. I'm just going to give respect to Tom Brady. if that were the case and they changed the trophy name, I'd be fine with it. I think that would be a great thing to happen. I'm curious to see what everybody else thinks.
Yeah.
It's just Belichick, man. He's done with the NFL now at this point.
Go be with your college girlfriend and go recruit and go build North Carolina into as good of a team as their basketball team has been.
I mean, he talks about how like he longed to go to college and coach college. He just needed the girl that was the same age as a college student to be able to go coach college. That was his real dream.
He just did it for the ladies.
Yeah, he did, and a lot
Can't
of
say
people
that I blame him.
Well, a lot of people are saying, look, he's a great head coach. North Carolina's going to get the ACC bid in the playoffs.
I don't know. We'll see how that all goes because there's still some good teams, and it's gonna take a while for that program to build up. It's not going to be a 1-year turnaround unless they get like some ridiculous transfer who like wants to play for Bill Belichick.
Well, the narrative was Bill Belichick was going to get whoever Texas was going to do away with, and then Ewers declares for the NFL draft. So Arch Manning's in Texas. He doesn't get a guy. He already got a quarterback transfer in North Carolina, so that might be his guy. It's just like you don't really know how college football is going to play out until it plays out.
Yep.
Like even this year was so. I mean, it's probably the craziest year of college football ever.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, I think we can say that the upsets that happened 3 weeks, the most times a ranked team has lost in the same week happened 3 times in a row from what the record was in 2007.
I believe 3 of the 4 bye teams all lost in the college football playoff. I think that's right because Oregon, Georgia.
I think all of them lost.
Oh yeah, because Oregon, Georgia.
All 4 seeds lost.
Because
you had Boise, Arizona State, Oregon, and Georgia. They all gone.
Oh, Arizona State won the Big 12. I forgot about that.
Because you get that new bid if you win your conference title now.
Yeah, so you get that bye.
And I'm just intrigued to see what the new season has. Because you look at it and you say, hey, we can say all we want about how a lot of people are upset about an expansion of the playoffs, because they thought it was going to be too much like March Madness, how there was too much parity, and there was, honestly. There was a lot of parity in college football.
Which is great.
Which was great for the game in hindsight. A lot of people didn't want that, though. They didn't want college football to change. And when you look at it and you look at the expansion, it was a complete success.
Mm-hmm.
We just said that all 4 teams that had a bye lost their first game.
Yep.
And that just shows you that if all 4 of those teams happened a year ago, they'd all be in the playoffs, and then all the teams that beat them would be playing New Year's Six Bowls.
Yep. I didn't even think you wouldn't even have Boise State and Arizona State in the
you
top
might not
4.
even have them.
No, you'd have Georgia and Oregon for sure, but then you probably throw in like an Ohio State, and then whoever, maybe Texas probably gets in that mix somewhere. Notre Dame.
I mean, and then it would cause problems like, hey, did you really choose the 4 teams that are supposed to be?
Exactly.
And so now we have this 12 team, and then now there are talks of, hey, we want to expand it even more in the future. So now we're talking about all this different kind of changes after we want to change history. And we go back to the trophy. We can't change history, Jackson.
Nope.
We can change and adapt. We can adapt.
Yep.
But we don't need to change history. But Jackson.
Yes.
You already get me riled up. And Nate Nessie's not even here. So we can't even get messy tonight. But I'm going to tell you what we can do. Because I'm ready to rant about the New Orleans Saints.
Oh, boy.
So tonight, live from Mobile, Alabama, we are about to eat a little gravy with C. Davy.
All right, go off then.
New Orleans Saints.
Yes.
Mickey Loomis.
Nope.
Gail Benson. Tom Benson's grave. He's rolling around right now. in what he is witnessing 6 feet under.
Oh my God.
The New Orleans Saints are almost a laughing stock of what they used to be. We had a show. Who's going to be the next head coach for the New Orleans Saints? We had a lot of options then. Now, it's almost to nothing. There's favorites. There's a couple people. We talked about Cliff Kingsbury before.
Yep.
Hey, this was an option. He's going to wait till he gets out of the playoffs because it was the mistake Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn made when they went up against the Commanders, because everyone was saying, hey, they weren't focusing on the playoffs. They went and had a little bit too many interviews with different teams to see where they were going to be in their head coaching positions, and so they kind of got a little bit distracted. So Cliff Kingsbury said, I'm cutting that out. I'm playing in the playoffs. This is historic. He's out. He said, hey, I'm going to stay with the Commanders because of how good we just did. I think we can do better the next coming years. So Cliff Kingsbury is out of the equation.
Yep.
Okay? You bring in someone like Mike McCarthy, my favorite, the guy who I wanted. He goes 4 years in Dallas. He says, hey, Jerry, give me 1 year. We'll be great the next year. He starts building. He starts putting all these chemicals together to build his roster, and he goes 12-5 in his second year in Dallas. Guess what he does after that? 12-5 again. 12-5 again. And in this past year, he didn't do so great, and Jerry said, hey, I loved you 12-5 in a row. You didn't keep it going. You're out of Dallas. So he goes. He interviews with the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints say, hey, you're a good candidate. I think you're a good candidate. I think he's the best candidate. He's the guy can get you to a playoff. If you want him to be kind of a rent coach, you pay him for a couple of years, and you say, hey, you did what you were supposed to do. You're off. We're going to get somebody younger who can build this program and finish where you left off. Look, Mike McCarthy says, hey, I don't want that Saints job. I don't want that job in New Orleans. That's a lot of work. And I don't blame him. It's a lot of work. So Mike McCarthy says, hey, I'm going to focus on the 2026 coaching cycle. And that's what he does. So now Mike McCarthy is out. So really, we're left with one big favorite candidate, and a couple other guys. And one of those guys happens to be a head coach here in Mobile named Mike Kafka.
Lions quarterback legend.
I'm not sure I want Mike Kafka. It's a big risk. Nonetheless, whoever they sign is a risk.
Yep. Because
this is Mickey's mindset. And I think I've mentioned this before on the show. I don't know if I have. He goes in, probably 2006, can't remember. I think I've explained this to you earlier today. He signs a man, or drafts a man by the name of Jari Evans. Plays a little bit less than D1 football. He goes in those lower divisions of football. Mickey still constantly tries to get the same dang offensive lineman in these drafts. That's why Trevor Penny's on the New Orleans Saints, the biggest reach in NFL history. Because he keeps trying to get people from northern Iowa and Arkansas Pine Bluff to try to play football. And it just doesn't work. It happened once, Mickey. Leave it. Let it be history. Quit trying to repeat it. Because it's not going to work. You draft on who's good. You draft. That's how you just look. Whoever you like, don't draft because they went to northern Iowa. Mickey makes the most emotional signings, I swear, drafting, and it makes me so mad. Until Mickey Loomis is out of New Orleans, then we can truly prosper again. Mike Kafka. I'm not sure I like him. But the favorite, and who is probably going to go to New Orleans, who I have to be okay with, is Eagles offensive coordinator Kellen Moore. He's now in the Super Bowl, so he has a lot to prove. See what he does in the Super Bowl. But if you think about it, this is almost like the Jari Evans scenario.
Okay.
Let's go back, Jackson. I'm going to bring you back just a little bit. I'm going to
right.
bring you back before 2006. Let's go back. The Saints, they're stumbling a little bit. You sign someone like Jim Everett, who has your quarterback passing yard record in the season at the time.
Yeah.
And you sign him, you say, hey, you have a little bit of history here in New Orleans. We're going to make you the head coach. It doesn't work out. Of course it doesn't work out. It's emotional signing. Mickey Loomis is great for that. But he sees another guy, happens to be a coordinator in Dallas. And he says, hey, let's take a risk on you. And bam, the Sean Payton era was born. And what we know and love of the New Orleans Saints is what Sean Payton produced.
Yep.
So if you look at it, Sean Payton was younger. He was an offensive coordinator. He was really good at what he did. And now you have a young coach, Kellen Moore, an offensive coordinator, really good at what he does. And now you're trying to repeat history again by signing Kellen Moore. So, Jackson, I know I ranted a lot. I apologize. I'm just passionate about the New Orleans Saints.
You got it.
Let me know your thoughts. If the Saints choose to sign Kellen Moore, I hope they don't sign. I'm not going to say that because he's here. He shall not be named. I hope they don't sign him. If they sign Kellen Moore, give me some pros and cons. If you don't see any cons, that's great. It'll make me feel better about the signing. Kellen Moore in New Orleans. Go, Jackson.
Yeah, I think I will actually start with the negatives, and it's not a negative of Kellen Moore necessarily. It's the concern with every first-time head coach because there's always that worry: are they going to work out? That's something in the back of my mind with the Bears with Ben Johnson. Like, yes, hottest coordinator, looks great on paper for what he did with the Lions, but is he going to work out as a head coach? There's always that transition. So that would worry me about Kellen Moore, of course. Now, the positives of it is it would be New Orleans heading in a not only a familiar direction, like you said, but they did with Sean Payton, but they would also be heading in the current trend of where the NFL is at, where you get your young offensive coaches that you keep forever and you move forward with that. There are very few like defensive-minded guys that are still sticking around as head coaches. You got like your John Harbaugh, your Jim Harbaugh, but even Jim Harbaugh was a former quarterback. He just also does a great job of hiring defensive staffs. Fangio when he was in San Francisco. So there's that. There's not a ton of guys. Maybe DeMeco Ryans with the Texans.
Seattle's got one.
Oh yeah, Mike McDonald. For sure. So, but I mean, Jonathan Gannon actually with the Cardinals. He was defensive coordinator with the Eagles. So, but even he's a younger guy. So, regardless, you're looking for young coaches that you can keep for a while, preferably on the offensive side, because if you get a hot offensive coordinator, same thing happens with the Lions. You lose your offensive coordinator to a team that needs a head coach. So, if they get a guy like Kellen Moore, you solve that problem where if like you lose coordinators, your offensive coordinator, not a big deal. And then if maybe once in a while you lose a defensive coordinator who wants to become a head coach, that's great because that means your defense is good. And hopefully you can bring other guys in to keep that same standard. The other positive is that he's had success with some really talented offenses. With Dallas when they had CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, after they traded him from the Raiders, Tony Pollard, Ben Schultz, not Ben Schultz. Who am I thinking of? Dalton Schultz. Ben Schultz was someone I went to college with, funny enough. Really talented offenses. Now he's doing the same thing with Philly. Obviously, you got Saquon Barkley. You got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. You got Dallas Goedert. So he can do well with the talented groups. The thing is that on the flip side is like, is he just being carried by the talent that's already there?
Who's New Orleans at?
Exactly. Like who? Like me? You got the withered remains of Alvin Kamara, and then you got the perpetually injured Chris Olave, and then at that point you're relying on Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler at quarterback, the fossilized utility man of Taysom Hill, who's way overpaid. So that's the biggest outside of like just being a first time head coach. Is he going to be able to work with what New Orleans has, considering the cap situation, the recent draft history, like you brought up? Because outside of that magical 2017 class where they brought in Lattimore, Kamara, Ramczyk, though at least those three guys, not to mention a couple other guys that
that are gone now.
They're already gone.
Keep them.
Exactly. Trey Hendrickson was part of that draft class. He's gone.
Alex Anzalone.
He's gone. I think he's with the Lions now.
A
Anyway.
starter for the Lions.
Yeah, so he hasn't done that great since outside of getting Chris Olave. But 99 out of 100 GMs are going to pick Chris Olave, because I think they did trade up to get him, if memory serves. So 99 out of 100 GMs who trade up to do that are going to pick Chris Olave in that situation. So it's not like some diamond in the rough type pick. Like, let's say, an Eddie Jackson was for the Bears a while ago. He was a 4th-round pick at Alabama. So it's hard to do that, and it's not an easy task to find those diamonds in the rough. But you have to build a young roster so you can get cheap guys, so then you can sign veterans at positions of need, where if you overpay by $2 to $4 million, it's not a big deal. But the problem is, it's not even that. He overpays the guys he already has or he's getting. He overpaid for Derek Carr. He overpaid Taysom Hill. Heck, even at the time, he might have overpaid for Cam Jordan when he got his extension a while ago.
He overpaid for Cam Jordan.
And, I mean, it was a 1-year deal, so it's not that big a deal, but you say he might have overpaid for Chase Young, because I rarely heard his name, and when I did, it was about a lack of effort during some games.
He's rotational. You pay $14 million to somebody, you ain't going to have him start. He rotated.
Exactly. And there's no reason to pay a situational pass rusher $14 million. You want to pay him $8 million like a Yannick Ngakoue, that's fine. You're not paying that guy that much money just to do that. So they got a lot of work to do. They're well over the cap, as they always are, so they got to work their nonsensical magic in terms of trying to get back under the cap. I don't know what you do. I think maybe you just start. They already started. They traded Marshawn Lattimore away to get some of that money.
Beautiful.
Maybe you say goodbye to Cam Jordan. Maybe you just.
He's got to hang the boots up.
Yeah.
He's got to hang them up.
Ramczyk, I think you said, is retiring or might retire soon.
He's retiring, and it'll open up $15 million in the cap.
So there's that as well. And maybe you just take the L and make Taysom Hill a post-June 1st cut to save as much money as you can on that. So they got a lot of work to do, and that's probably why they were probably one of the least desirable coaching spots. Because you got to think about it, when all these spots opened up, the Jets, talented defense, some talent on offense, even without Devontae Adams. You still got Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and some decent offensive line pieces. The Bears, lots of cap space, top 10 pick, number 1 quarterback who looked solid at times for you. Looks great. The Jaguars, you got Trevor Lawrence, some good receivers like Brian Thomas Jr. You got some interest. You got Travis Etienne. You got Evan Ingram. You got some talent on defense that maybe if you upgrade some certain spots, you can work with that. But when you look at the Saints, it's like not a ton of cap space. Mid-round, first-round pick, because they were 8-9 this year, 7-10, something like that.
They won like 5 or 6 games.
Okay, so. But there were so many bad teams this year that even going 5-12 means you're somewhere looking at not even a top 10 pick at that point. There's so many bad teams this year. So it's hard for guys like, that's why Joe Brady declined. That's why Cliff Kingsbury declined to head on to take that job and stay where they are.
I forgot to mention Joe Brady. I'm glad he stayed.
So they're in a very, very, very tough spot. It's going to take them a few years to get out of it. And who knows who's available in the 2026 draft class.
I agree. But if I'm making, this is what I'm doing, Jack. Okay? This job is not
Firing
desirable
myself?
whatsoever. Yeah, if I could fire myself. This job is not desirable whatsoever. And I'm saying this completely unbiased. This is not a desirable job. If I was a highly tenured head coach, I probably wouldn't want to take it. Because Mike McCarthy, the man's old. The Saints would probably drive him to his death trying to fix that place. So that's why they got to get a young up-and-coming head coach. But if I'm Mickey Loomis, You got to get rid of all them people eating your Cam. You got to tell Cam Jordan. He said he wants to come back for another year. Tell him he's got to hang the boots up. Let him retire. Give him his money. But look, Mickey Loomis said, hey, the next head coach has every ounce of decision when it comes to quarterback play next season. So, hypothetically, if Kellen Moore comes to New Orleans, we know he's an offensive guy. Okay? Derek Carr is in his third year of his 4-year contract. The next year will be his void year. If they cut him post June 1st, they would still be able to keep money, but they would still incur a big dead hit. So I don't think you do that. I think you just keep him for the third year. You can drop him his void year. If I'm Kellen Moore, and I just saw Spencer Rattler broke the single season passing record for a rookie. He did do that. That is
Somehow
true.
That's a worse record than the Bears.
That is true. I think it was like 1,600 passing yards, but he did it. That's all that matters, because they hadn't drafted a first-round quarterback since 1971 in Archie Manning. But if I'm Kellen Moore and I have Derek Carr and I have Spencer Rattler, Jake Hayner's out the equation. I don't want to see Jake Hayner step foot in football. What am I doing in terms of the future when it comes to these two quarterbacks?
Well, I think you pretty much nailed it on the head with what you do with Derek Carr. You let him play out this third year, so what you got, and then you cut him, or maybe you find a way to trade him to get some like late round picks, find a way to make the salaries work with a team that maybe needs like a journeyman quarterback at that point. Although honestly, I think at the end of the day, it would be in the Saints' best interest, and I'd have to double check the dead cap situation. It would be in the Saints' best interest to just cut Derek Carr, do what the Broncos did, and just eat that money for the year, for however long they'd have to eat it. Let the young guys start. See what you got in Spencer Rattler for a full season. Maybe bring a different veteran in as a backup. Maybe like a Joe Flacco. Bring Jameis Winston back to New Orleans as a potential option. I'm not sure what other free agent quarterbacks are out there necessarily. Maybe even bring in like Jimmy Garoppolo as a veteran backup piece. So I think that would be in the best interest of the Saints to just move on from Derek Carr and not waste anybody's time, because as great as Derek Carr has been, he hasn't been the same guy people thought he would be since he broke his leg in 2016 with the Raiders. I think people thought Derek Carr was on a top 10 to top 5 quarterback trajectory at that point in his career, especially with how young he was. He just never got close to that. Maybe a couple top 10, maybe. But he's just not going to be that anymore. He's suffered so many injuries in his career. It's just in the best interest for him and for the Saints to just move on as soon as possible. You're already a crap ton over the cap anyway. Just eat the dead money you got with him and just move on. See what you got in the young guys.
I think you did it right. If Mickey Loomis thinks he's getting another Sean Payton, why not do what Sean Payton did with the Broncos? I mean, he took them to the playoffs here too. Yeah, he did really good. What, they won seven games the first year? I don't think that's a bad first year.
7-10 for a rebuilding roster with a quarterback that he clearly didn't like.
Yeah, and then you got the quarterback you like, but it was at the expense of $33 million.
If not more.
And now the Saints are in the same situation. If Kellen Moore really likes Spencer Rattler, heck, if he really likes Jake Hayner, I hope he doesn't, but if he really likes Jake Hayner, you eat that money post June 1st.
Yes.
You got to wait till June 1st. You see what you got. It's best to let the young guys play and develop than to keep the old horse in the barn when you know it's going to die in the next couple of years. You can't win a contest with an old horse. Nobody's going to want to see that crap. You got to get a young horse that has the most beautiful mane.
Got to get a stallion.
You got to get a stallion, Jackson. That's what New Orleans needs.
Yep.
But with the stallion comes It's Italian Stallion owner, and that's Kellen Moore.
You gotta have the right trainer.
Is that going to be Kellen Moore and Rattler? Can we see that in a universe working out?
That's a great question.
Showed promise.
He
Let's say
did.
showed promise.
He did. There were some moments where he looked really good. I think there was that game again. I think it was against the Falcons in New Orleans where he was like really struggling. The first quarter, they were down like 21-0 or 14-0 or something like that. Or maybe that was against the Bucks. It was against the Buccaneers.
He played against the Bucks, yeah.
And then in that second quarter, they go off for like 28 unanswered points because of him, or whatever the total number was. Like, there is promise with him. I just don't know if Kellen Moore's the right guy to bring it out of him, or if there's anything else to bring out, and whether he could just be a career backup.
You get him for a 5th round pick. You usually don't have that high of expectations for a 5th round pick. If it works out, it just happens to work out. But usually people don't necessarily put 5th rounders in the spot to succeed unless it just happens. And I think Spencer Rattler has been put in a spot, not necessarily the successful spot or the spot where he can succeed.
Mm-hmm.
The only way I think you can perfectly judge that is to let him play ball.
Yeah, that's the only way you can determine. It's how the Bears determined that Justin Fields wasn't the guy anymore, at least for them. He was okay with Pittsburgh, but I think at the end of the day, they were right.
And maybe get a guy like Justin Fields in New Orleans.
That would be interesting to have a Rattler Fields competition in New Orleans. I was talking about this with Cy the other day. I think like Justin Fields and with the Giants would be very interesting too. But no, I think if Fields wants a chance to prove it, I think honestly New Orleans or New York are like the two best places he can prove he can be a starter. Unless Russell Pittsburgh and he could stay there and be the starter.
And I think this is the way I want it. And this is what I flaw Chicago for doing this year. You put all your eggs in a basket with the quarterback like Caleb Williams. He had no competition whatsoever. For me, I have a twin brother. I've had competition my whole life. And I think that makes me better as an individual because my brother is a very high standard. And for me to meet that and maybe exceed it sometimes would mean that I am succeeding. To have healthy competition on a team or to have competition in a quarterback room is healthy. This is healthy for a quarterback to grow because if you have somebody that is that standard of success that you are competing against, the only way you can ensure that you are the starter for the team you are on is to either meet it or beat it. In either way, that's success. That's the only reason I thought Caleb Williams, and I predicted perfectly what was going to happen. He had no competition in Chicago, and he didn't do as well as everyone thought he was going to do. He didn't break 4,000 passing yards. He didn't beat the Bears passing yards record everybody thought he was going to do.
He got very close.
He got close to it, but it's because he didn't have competition, Jackson. I think if he had competition, a lot would have been brought out of him, and maybe you would have seen a different quarterback in Chicago.
I think there's an argument to be had there, but honestly, I think that's so low on the totem pole of reasons why Caleb and the Bears struggled.
Sure.
Like, you literally had two of the worst coaches out there in Matt Eberflus, who did not know how to call a timeout or do a challenge. And then you had Shane Waldron, who I should have guessed when CHEO, they interviewed Jackson Smith and Jig about, I think it was at Super Bowl week or the draft, or it was so shortly after they hired Shane Waldron, and he didn't seem all that upset that Shane Waldron was leaving Seattle. So I should have known. So I think those obviously were two of the. I think maybe, but again, that's also the fault of maybe the coach and the GM. At some point, they decided not to bring anybody else in. They had. Who did they have? They had Tyson Bagent as QB2, who was a rookie.
That's not competition.
last year, and then they
D2
had
quarterback. That's not competition.
exactly, and then they had a couple other guys that they had brought in, some veteran guys. One of them I think played for the Broncos at some point. So yeah, I mean they did not bring any like true serious competition. You're right, but I think that is so low on the totem pole between head coach, offensive coordinator, and the offensive line being injured and bad.
It's obviously low on the totem pole, but in Spencer Rattler's case, if nothing's unlocked in him now, I think competition can bring it out. I mean, really, it's almost psychology at this point.
Mhm.
And I think psychology states competition was going to bring out the best in you. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for Caleb Williams.
No,
I'm just
yeah.
saying that was kind of what I flawed them at first.
Well, that was one of the many things you could fly them for.
It's just, I think if you bring competition to New Orleans, this obviously you have to get rid of Derek Carr in this scenario.
Yes.
If you bring competition in New
Or
Orleans,
heck, you keep Derek Carr and you just make it an open competition
You
from
could.
the get-go.
you could. I mean, he'd still be eating money one way or the other. He'd still be eating money. I think to truly bring out the best in Rattler is to have that healthy competition.
I agree.
And we'll see what happens in New Orleans. But, Cy, if you don't mind, we're done eating a little gravy with C. Davy. There's a little bit of a spiritual topic song. If you don't mind setting that volume a little lower, about to maybe 10, 11, 12. Playing that song for me, putting it on loop just so in case it goes off. I won't speak too long, but
There's a lot of sound here. What's the name?
it should be called Spiritual Topic Song. Because I'm going to introduce the spiritual topic for today. Turn that down to about 12.
It's at 11.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce the spiritual topic. I'll make it quick. But as we end the week on a high note, we have to begin the week on a high note. And heck, this has been a heck of a day. I'm tired. So
Seconded.
I got to kind of give us in high spirits for the rest of the week so we can end strong and go back to our happy places in safe travel. So, Si, if you don't mind going to the banners, I want to introduce new week, new chapter. Now, this was, Jackson, you've been on the show before.
Yep.
This was something Nate and I agreed on. If either one of us missed the show, this is something that has to stay regardless of what it is. Usually I pull up a scripture, either one of us does, we kind of preach about it or whatever, and then we say a prayer in the show, and then we're good. We kind of knew what our thing is, and we end on a high note. We're in high spirits for the rest of the day. So, I didn't have a scripture, so I'm just going to kind of speak from the heart, I guess, and then we'll say a little prayer, we'll go off. I don't want to be too long. We still got Arby's waiting on us, so I'm excited about that. But honestly, I just want to say a lot of us, especially this trip, it can be a little stressful at times. A lot of times where we can be a little bit over our heads. We get a little bit anal sometimes, maybe raise our voices sometimes, and we just get a little bit too emotional. And I'm speaking for myself too. This isn't just everybody. I mean, I'm speaking for myself as well. And the best way to really get rid of those emotions is some good scripture and some good prayer. So, as we end this episode, if you don't mind, Jackson, I would like to say a prayer for us for the rest of the week, and then for safe travels when we get back, and then we'll end the show, and then we'll be done, and we can go to Arby's. So,
Go for it.
if you don't mind, Lord, thank you for bringing us here today, all four of us here. Thank you for the safe travels to Mobile, and then safe travels when we leave here. Thank you for the success we've had this week, Lord, and hopefully we can have more success by the end of the week. Lord, thank you for giving us this opportunity, an opportunity that none of us thought we would have, Lord. And thank you for just giving it to us so that we may find success in our life and success in the plan that you have for us, Lord. So for the rest of the week, I pray for safe travels. I pray you watch over us, Lord, in whatever we do, and maybe that we not get so angry at one another, we not get so anal, and we not get so stressed out and over our heads, but we just look at the true message, and the true message is you, Lord. Until we know that plan for you and that true message, it is in your Son's holy and perfect and precious name that we pray. Amen. Well, Jackson, before we end the breakdown X's and O's without Nate Ness, is there anything you'd like to say before we go to Arby's?
No, I think I don't want to spoil how you wrap that up. I think the speaking from the heart was perfect.
I appreciate it, Jackson. Well, I have a big announcement. Dang, I forgot to put it in the description. But I have a big announcement, and if you made it this far, thank you. The breakdown, X's and O's. We've been on Wednesday for a while, but we're going to go back to the OG schedule. The breakdown will be back on Tuesdays at 7 o'clock until we find a conflict in schedule again like we did with Wednesdays. I just can't do Wednesdays anymore. I get out of class at 6:15. I can't rush back before 7 o'clock and get everything done. So the breakdown is going back to Tuesdays. I'm happy. I hope everybody's happy. We don't have back-to-back shows. We kind of have a space in between. And then we just have a great week of TDT nonetheless for the next weeks to come. The breakdown is now on Tuesday. Jackson, I want to thank you for being the co-host and stepping up and taking Nate's spot. It's hard to fill the shoes of a 5-year NFL veteran, the man, the myth, legend, Nate Ness. But Jackson did it. But until next week, there is an outro. Okay.
I think there's 2 outros actually we need to run.
No, you don't have to do the card guy.
Okay, just the
You don't have to do the card guy, just the one. We only have an hour show, so I just kind of do the card guy. But I know what Si was thinking. Jeff Retepney, shout out to you. Until next week, we'll be on Tuesday. We will be on Tuesday. Don't you forget the breakdown on Tuesday. Say it 3 times like Jackson was a couple players' names today, so we wouldn't forget. We'll see you next week. I'm your co-host, Connor Davis. Over here is Jackson Gross. This has been the Breakdown X's and O's. We will see you next time.